The encampment grew, and at a certain point, Shafiq called for NYPD to come onto campus and remove the students, which they did forcibly.
On April 17, 2024, a series of protests were held in Columbia University in New York City by the student body, who demanded the university's complete divestment of tuition funds towards Israel amidst the enormous humanitarian crisis being carried out in the Gaza Strip. These protests involved students setting up roughly 50 tents on campus in an encampment to coerce administration into recognizing their demands. After facing off with university police and administration, the ordeal sparked a new movement across university campuses worldwide, but most notably in the West Coast of America. The student body of the University of California, Los Angeles, otherwise known as UCLA, had set up an encampment quickly after the Columbia University campus had been raided by the New York Police Department, which ended in destruction of the camp with hundreds of student protesters arrested. The UCLA protesters faced similar odds with the Los Angeles Police Department, forcibly dismantling the encampment and taking hundreds of student protesters into custody.
Police officers have just let off a flashbang device. It's used to distract these protesters as they prepare to move in and dismantle this encampment.
As seen by many shots taken by those in the area at the time of the UCLA raids, there was an incredibly dense police presence around the campus. In an interview with California Highway Police Officer Eric Larson, he stated that, quote, at least 250 CHP officers were involved in clearing the encampment. Other law enforcement agencies, such as the Los Angeles Police Department, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, and the UCLA University Police, were also on the scene. The chief of the LAPD was also reported to express a desire to send in even more officers. According to an article published by KTLA-5, Chief Thomas had previously told UCLA officials that he could mobilize law enforcement in minutes. However, it took 3 hours to actually bring in enough officers to get the situation under control. Footage of snipers on nearby roofs around campus were spread on the internet as well. Now, police officers are not cheap to keep on payroll. At a starting salary of roughly $86,000, not including the many benefits and perks they receive from their job, the combined minimum salary of LAPD officers alone brought in to crush a non-violent protest is easily within 7 to 8 figures worth of government taxpayer money. Snipers, of course, are paid much more than your average cop. Calls from the chief of police to bring in as many officers within a 3-hour radius also may make one raise an eyebrow at how many on-duty officers are left to prevent actual crime. This begs the question: if the LAPD is able to misuse a significant portion of their multi-million-dollar daily manpower in purging student protests instead of genuine threats to civilian safety, what reason is there for continuing to funnel massive amounts of taxpayer dollars into the department? The use of police violence against civilians has been prevalent in nearly every instance of civil disobedience by the public, sometimes even completely unprovoked. Famous Los Angeles examples include the 1943 Zoot Suit riots, the 1967 Century City demonstrations, and the 1992 Los Angeles Rodney King riots. While being anti-police has been popular in many youth movements throughout the 20th century, bleeding into the 21st, I am sure many would agree the popularization of police defiance in Generation Z began during the Black Lives Matter movement in both 2016 and 2020. These demonstrations brought with them the chant, "Defund the police," which more specifically was the belief that government should cut police department spending due to corrupt policemen brutalizing and often killing minorities, and allocate those extra funds into social services such as housing or education, which would instead benefit marginalized communities.
60 young Angelenos who are joining the police department. About half the class is ready to graduate next week. The other class, the other part of the group is beginning their training. 60 young Angelenos who are joining the police department. About half the class is ready to graduate next week. The other class, the other part of the group is beginning their training.
The city of Los Angeles spends approximately 15% of their budget on their police force, which consists of approximately 9,000 officers as of 2023. This is also the lowest number of police officers the LAPD has seen since the mayorship of Richard Riordan in the 1990s. That being said, the LAPD has released end-of-year crime statistics at the beginning of 2024, stating that homicide and violent crime rates went down 17% and 2.3% respectively. It is also noteworthy that starting from 1993, the year in which Richard Riordan was elected as mayor of Los Angeles, and in which the officer population within LAPD was at record lows, the crime rates made a drastic decrease year after year. Crime rates only saw an increase in 2015, in which LAPD consisted of nearly 10,000 officers. These two factors might suggest that the size of the institution does not directly correlate with the change of crime rate in the city of Los Angeles. Despite this, Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass aims to grow the police department by hiring nearly 600 more officers in the next fiscal year.
America's public enemy number one in the United States is drug abuse. In order to fight and defeat this enemy, it is necessary to wage a new all-out offensive. I have asked the Congress to provide the legislative authority and the funds to fuel this kind of an offensive.
Though basing one's position on police spending purely on efficiency is a perfectly reasonable rationale, a wide majority of those who believe in defunding law enforcement primarily take into account major social concerns, of which Los Angeles has a deep history of. Brutalization of Hispanic youth in Los Angeles during World War II era America peaked in the 1940s Zoot Suit riots, in which off-duty police officers and servicemen attacked Mexican-American youths under the banner of white supremacist ideology. During the War on Drugs, a nationwide movement enacted by the government in the early 1970s in an attempt to crack down on drug usage and stop civilians from succumbing to addiction, tough-on-crime laws were enacted, creating strict policies and harsh sentences for those with any relation to illicit substances. This resulted in people of color in Los Angeles and across the nation facing mass incarceration at an incredibly disproportionate amount, while most were arrested over petty crimes such as minor substance abuse. In the 1990s, police beat and falsely charged Rodney King, resulting in the beginning of a series of protests with the intent to combat rampant police brutality. In the 21st century, the Black Lives Matter movement in 2016 and 2020 was prominent throughout nearly all major cities in America, with Los Angeles being no exception. This city has police distrust running through its veins, as much of the civilian population descend from people who were either discriminated against by law enforcement or knew someone who was. A 2016 study by Rich Morin and Renee Stepler at the Pew Research Center found that 75% of white respondents were satisfied with the activity of LAPD, compared to 58% of Hispanic respondents and 35% of black respondents. Repeated discrimination and subduing of marginalized communities, as well as implementing excessive tools for surveillance, has only sowed the seeds of distrust for generations to come.
Don't ever confuse me with the defund police movement. Hell, I was the first mayor in San Francisco history that actually met our statutory requirement of 1933 or 1973 police officers.
The act of actually defunding the police is not exactly one that is universally agreed upon by all who hold this position. Some think LAPD is a necessary force that should only be moderately defunded in order to make room for other services that can be used by underprivileged communities in the cities. A few of these include the creation of more low-income housing, subsidies for public education, affordable health care, better help for those suffering from mental illness, as well as many other factors. Others think LAPD should be abolished in its entirely, due to it only protecting the wealthy and powerful while raining an iron fist over the ordinary people. As LAPD recruits more and more people of color into their ranks to appeal to and build trust between communities in Los Angeles, the practice of civil disobedience has only become more prevalent in recent years, and these protesters of the new generation are experiencing firsthand what dynamic the police force has in relation to them and are forming their own conclusions. While defunding the police is certainly a pipe dream in our current political climate, it is not a sentiment that can simply be ignored. I fucking voice cracked so hard. I want to do it again. I voice cracked on the last word. Isn't that insane? On the last fucking word. I'm so hungry. That's why. Okay. The act of actually defunding the police is not exactly one that is universally agreed upon by all who hold this position. Some think LAPD is a necessary force that should only be moderately defunded in order to make room for other services that can be used by underprivileged communities in the city. A few of these include the creation of more low-income housing, subsidies for public education, affordable health care, better help for those suffering from mental illness, as well as many other factors. Others think LAPD should be abolished in its entirety due to it only protecting the wealthy and powerful while raining an iron fist over the ordinary people. As LAPD recruits more and more people of color into their ranks to appeal and build trust between communities in Los Angeles, the practice of civil disobedience has only become more prevalent in recent years, and these protesters of the new generation are experiencing firsthand what dynamic the police force has in relation to them and are forming their own conclusions. While defunding the police is certainly a pipe dream in our current political climate, it is not a sentiment that can simply be ignored.